We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Trying to breathe here in the Vancouver area because
Oh, are you guys on fire too, or is it just wafting
it is
your
wafting
way?
our way. We've had a couple of small fires. We actually had a fire at a waterfront area. It wasn't a wildfire, just had a fire. But that was not the reason. It was the large amount of wildfires all the way down the west coast of the United States, and that area is blowing up into Vancouver. We have the second worst air quality in the world at this time, which is very unusual.
America still got you beat.
It's very unusual for Vancouver. Normally, our air quality is a highlight of our
used to
area.
be coming in second to America.
Yep.
That's all I gotta say. Canada, America light.
So I have been wearing my respirator at more than just work. I've been wearing it pretty much every moment I can.
Oh God.
And yeah.
So we've got hurricane currently second or third hurricane that's hit the Gulf Coast this season, churning out there. Slowed down and picked up a lot of the water and a lot of speed, and got to a category 1, maybe 2. I'm not really sure. It's churning out there in the Gulf. We've got wildfires on the West Coast, looking for some tornadoes, maybe an earthquake to kind of complete the whole bingo card of natural disaster. We started with the pandemic.
Yep, sure did.
We're just going to do them all. We're doing all the stuff. This is 2020, the years that we all learned that the Mayans miscalculated by about 8 years. 2012 wasn't so bad.
Dude, I mean,
somebody didn't carry their one, I think is what happened there.
People are obviously anticipating that that future years hopefully won't be as bad as this one. But I just had to laugh because I'm like, you remember when people were saying like 2016, get out of here. 2016 was bad year. 2017 is going to be better. Like I remember seeing a lot of that on Twitter. I'm like,
they always say that though.
But at the time, I was like, no, we're just exiting what was a pretty darn good, 5-6 year spell there. But yes, yeah.
Everything is looking pretty good in retrospect right now. What are you talking about? I'm looking back. I'm looking back on quite a few. I mean, you have to go back to like a war of some kind before I start going, well, okay,
sure.
yeah, maybe not that far.
Well, I'll tell you what is an unreserved good thing from the near past was our thanks to DJ for filling in last week. DJ from the Bright Side Home Theater Podcast.
I still haven't gotten his back. When's that supposed to clear?
Given the amount of notice, there might be a delay on that there, Tom. But
I mean, DJ, you gotta remember, man. I'm like an elephant. I got a long memory here. You gotta pony up, buddy. You want to be on the podcast, you gotta pay up. This is big time exposure for you, sir. Literally hundreds of people have seen you, heard and seen you. I saw him and I was like, oh, that's what
that is what he looks like.
I don't know.
You didn't see him when you were on his podcast? You didn't.
I don't.
You did audio only. It's possible.
So.
Might have happened.
I might be wrong, and I might just be very old and feeble-minded. That might be
joking aside, I didn't actually know all the details of what he went through to be on the podcast on what was very, very short notice, as we mentioned, because he talked about it on his own podcast that came out last Friday, and he was doing a whole heck of a lot that day there. So
yeah, well, was it like lots of gymnastics? He had lots of.
Oh
meetings.
yeah,
I heard him say something about he was in a meeting.
Yeah,
right
he was
before
in a meeting recorded. Like while I was Skype calling him to start getting stuff set up, but then he had a gazillion other things going on. I can't remember all the details, but it was kind of ridiculous that he agreed to do it at all. So he definitely was happy to be here and sort of bent over backwards to make it happen. I didn't know it was quite that bad. I probably would have said, no, dude, we can wait till another week. But he really wanted to do it, so thank you to DJ because
till tomorrow morning. I mean, there's all sorts of things.
It was a nice episode, a nice fun podcast, and he was worried that you might be upset that we got through all the questions bar one. I was like, I don't think Tom will be upset. In fact, I know he won't.
No, because no, Tom never gets upset with that stuff. Number one. Number two, this is probably going to be a shorter
Oh,
podcast
is it
anyways.
now?
Well,
We
we'll
shall
see.
see.
The renovations have been going forward over here. Those very few of you that are my Facebook friends will have seen the pictures, but the gist of it is the family has decided that we're going to try to prime and paint the rooms that the other guys who are being paid by insurance aren't primed and
Sure.
painting, while there's no tile on the floor for the kids to screw up. So, though they're managing to screw up a bunch of other stuff, so that's when I take like 2 hours, 3 hours to painstakingly cut in,
Mm.
the ceiling, and then they come behind me with the roller and just smack it right against the roof. I'm like, thanks, guys. Nailing it. You guys are killing it down there. You are worth every cent I'm paying you. Yeah, it's I'm a little exhausted. We didn't actually get home tonight till so my time is 8 o'clock. We got home a little bit after 8:30, 8:20, and then we started this podcast. We're supposed to start at 9, so I'm like I'm like, okay, Daddy needs a nap, but it's not
Now,
gonna happen
when you
today.
say
So.
home, do you mean you guys are actually living back at home, or home as in
Oh no,
B&B?
home as in the place that we were staying at, the Airbnb. Which, by the way, while I am certainly not complaining in light of what people are probably going through right now in Mississippi and Louisiana and all that stuff. But yeah, Sally's just making it so that the whole point of us getting this place was so that we could have a pool is kind of
Mm.
useless. Haven't been able to get out there for quite some time, so thanks, Sally. Though I keep wanting to sing Mustang Sally every time I talk about this podcast. So there's all sorts of I have a real conflicting emotions going on. But this is not the Natural Disaster Podcast. This is the AVRant Podcast, where we answer your home theater and AV questions. To get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to avrant.com, leave us a comment, facebook.com/avrantpodcast, youtube.com/avrant. Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom. So I'm going to start by thanking our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. That will send you to a PayPal donation site. Where you can transfer money from your PayPal or put in your credit card information for a little more anonymity, I guess, if you don't want to have an online presence in this. So we want to thank Ian and Eric for doing that this week. Thank you very much, Ian.
Yeah, Ian, Eric, thank you very much for those PayPal donations.
We also want to thank our 125, back up to 125, patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon's a service that you can become a subscriber to your monthly subscriber. Monthly contributor to your content creators of choice, we being one of them. The minimum of $1 a month will be taken from your account and given to us, the majority of which will be given to us. So we want to thank our 125 patrons, including Enrique, who sent us a shout out, and thanks for our advice. So you're welcome, Enrique, and thank you to Enrique and the other 124 patrons over at Patreon.
For sure, that is patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. If you'd like to sign up, think of it as an automatic monthly donation, a voluntary subscription. Thank you so much to our 125 patrons, and Enrique, thank you so much for being one of them. I think he is the fellow who went by Eric on Twitter because he mentioned SPL meter advice, and that is the person I was talking about SPL meters with recently on Twitter. So I think that, but maybe not. Maybe Eric is different from Enrique, but if that's you, then you're welcome, and thank you.
I have paint in my hair.
I bet.
All right. We got some notes of gratitude from Adam Shawn, who's a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club. Matt, who founded our podcast at the beginning of the pandemic and said, "This is what I'm going to do with the next 3 months of my life."
There's plenty of backlog if you've got time to kill.
Hey, this is the podcast for you if you need to kill some time. Nathan, Shannon, John, Mike, and Brandon all sent notes of gratitude for us keeping this podcast going. So you're welcome, gentlemen and gentlemen.
Yeah. Adam, Sean, Matt, Nathan, Shannon, John. Oh my goodness, Mike and Brandon. Tom has no cough button because he's wearing a headset. And
wait, did it not?
It did not mute.
Wait,
it's scratchy. Oh, there you're muted. That muted now.
Sorry, guys. That's going to be
okay. He does have a
no. It's got a mute button.
Okay.
I I just didn't click it down hard enough, I guess. But I was like desperately trying to get there because the cough was coming. I really need a glass of water, but I don't have a kitchen and don't have any
All right.
glasses in the house.
Yes. Well, anyway, thank you very much for the notes of gratitude. We definitely appreciate the encouragement at this time because we can use it, and we want to thank everybody who continues to listen and send us questions because it's great to have the distraction and this wonderful community that keeps on going. So thank you, everyone.
And to all of our listeners, I want to reassure you that you can't get the Rona through a
Nope.
podcast. Now, though I did give blood last
Right,
week.
yeah. Saw that on Facebook.
Yep, and I got my test back. I'm antibody free, which means
You haven't had it yet.
I don't know what it means, but I haven't had it yet. That's just good. Though my wife, and she's been doing this since forever, but right around 7 p.m. every night, she'll start coughing for no reason.
Sure.
And it's really disconcerting these days. I'm like, can you just not?
But was she doing that
do that
prior to this disease existing?
Yeah,
Well, then
she's always
it's not
done
out
it.
of the normal, so.
I know, but it's we were walking through Publix and Publix is a supermarket. She started coughing. I'm like, dude, you're gonna get us thrown out of here. But there was a bunch of people walking around with no masks on in that place anyway, so whatever. In the news, after a bunch of leaked information found its way onto the internet, Microsoft decided to officially confirm the price, release date, and existence of the Xbox Series S, quickly followed by the price for the Xbox Series X and the Xbox All Access financing plan. All access financing plans. You're buying a car? Do they sell cars now? That's what it sounds like. Anyways, Xbox Series X will cost. This is the X, as in
the big one.
X-ray. will cost $500. It will release on November 10th, with pre-order starting September 22nd. There's also an option to pay $35 a month for 24 months via Xbox All Access, which spreads out your payments for the console while also giving you the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. $35 a month for 24 months sounds like more than $500.
Well, it is, but it's giving you Game Pass Ultimate, and Game Pass Ultimate would normally cost you $15 a month anyway. So if you were going to get Game Pass Ultimate, then you're spending an additional $20 on top of that for the Xbox Series X, which is $480.
Game Pass, right? Game Pass Ultimate includes Xbox Live Gold, xCloud game streaming, Xbox and PC Game Pass, and now EA Play. I hate EA as well. It normally costs $15 a month, so you're basically paying $20 a month for the console. But
so that's all the pricing, release date information for Xbox Series X, but there's the littler guy.
So the Xbox Series S, as in stupid, don't buy this. Sorry. Anyways, the S will cost $300 and will also release on November 10th with pre-order starting September 22nd. Xbox All Access for the Series S costs $25 a month, just $2 a month more than the Xbox One S. It should also be noted that All Access is expanding to 12 countries. The Series S has half the storage, so it's 512 gigabytes compared to the 1 terabyte in the X. But it's still a solid-state drive, and it has the slot for Microsoft's proprietary 1 terabyte solid-state drive expansion drive thingy, which is rumored to cost $220 all on its own. That doesn't seem terribly expensive, is that right? Oh, I forgot to put my phone on mute.
Yes. Well, yeah, $220 for 1 terabyte of SSD is, I mean, you can find them for about $200. This is a proprietary one. So it's not out of line for what a little SSD card would cost, but when the console costs $300 and expanding it to 1.5 terabytes, because you'd still have the half a terabyte that comes with the system plus the 1 terabyte expansion, and that brings you up to $500, which is the cost of an X, which already has 1 terabyte built in, then it kind of makes you question a little bit of that.
Yeah. There's no disk drive, of course. It has a white case with one large black circular grill for the fan. It's about 60% smaller than the Series X. It is aimed at 1440p resolution up to 120 frames per second. It has approximately 1/3 the GPU power and half the RAM. It can upscale to 4K resolution output, and it still has an HDMI 2.1 connection. So... And the other one, I guess, is black. Is that what I'm supposed to guess here? The one's black and one's
one
not.
is
that big? So the white thing with the big black thing, that's
the S. That's the Series S, and the black circle is where the fan is, in behind it. There's an exploded view.
It doesn't look very big.
It's not big. It is quite small. You can see it standing next to the Xbox
And is
Series
the other
X.
one like the size of a small shoebox? It looks like a shoebox.
Pretty much. It's pretty much what it is.
That's if no one asks me, but if they do, it's dumb.
So
I think anything that looks like that is
one
dumb.
little tidbit is that these are backwards compatible with all the previous generations of Xbox. But some folks might remember that, let's say you were playing an Xbox 360 game being upconverted on your One S. All right. Now that might look a little bit different than if it was being upconverted on your One X, or if you had a One X enhanced game, you would be playing that at a lower resolution on your One S. Well, now with these new Series consoles, the Series S gets the One S versions of backwards compatible games, and the Series X gets the One X versions of backwards compatible games. So, it's like you're getting a little downgrade on everything with the Series S.
Yeah, but how are you going to get these on that one that doesn't have a drive? Because the way that you got it before is you stuck it in the drive and it says, "Oh, you have this game. Let me."
That has not been made clear. Yeah, I guess you have to have some kind of digital version of it, the online version of it, so that you can download it from the Microsoft Store. That would be the only way it works without a disk drive. I hope they do some kind of disk to digital conversion plan, like Walmart did with Voodoo movies. So there you go. That's the Xbox news.
That is so very exciting. I cannot tell you how excited I am by having more game systems.
I'm just not super excited that this has now become the minimum requirements, essentially. Like if you look at PC gaming, right? You look at any game on the PC, it's got minimum system requirements, and that'll play it at whatever, like 720p resolution at 30 frames per second or something, right? Like barely playable,
right.
But that's the minimum requirements. Well, this means that Xbox Series S is the minimum system requirements. Like all games going forward for the next 6-7 years, they still have to be playable on the Series S. So that has become the minimum spec now. Like, what happens if 4 years from now, there's a developer making a game with so many graphical enhancements that the Series X struggles to play it at like 1080p 30? Because there's going to be some mid-year cycle things in 2-3 years that are more powerful than these ones. So it's like, at that point, are they going to do like 540p and 30 frames a second on the Series S? Like, I don't know that I'm happy with the goalpost having been moved down that far, but whatever. It is what it is. PlayStation 5 isn't doing it. There you go.
Go buy a PlayStation. Who cares? All right. Excuse me. This comes from Abdu.
Abdu?
Abdu?
I don't know if the H is pronounced. Abu?
Abu? I don't know.
Maybe it's Gaelic and the BH is a V. Avu? I have no idea.
Could be. I would not have guessed. You could have said that about any language, and I would have been like, I guess Rob knows what he's talking about, because I don't. Dolby and Microsoft announced that the Series X and Series S will support Dolby Atmos for games at launch and Dolby Vision for games in 2021. You would like to hear our thoughts about that, and DTS-X is being added to Xbox One and should be present on Series S and X, similar to what happens if you select Atmos as your bitstream output type. The new DTS-X option, currently in beta, sends out a DTS-X bitstream no matter what the original signal might be, and since there aren't any streaming or game sources, they must be applying Neural X upmixing and then giving that a DTS-X bitstream flag for your receiver or soundbar decode. You have lost your mind. There is no way that's what they're doing.
Well,
they're going to screw this up just like they've screwed up everything else when it comes to audio. They are going to just shoehorn whatever is they've got into the DTS-X. Yes, and it will be a Neural X, but I don't think that they're going to be up converting anything or not.
Well, they must be up mixing. I mean, people are going to expect to hear something coming out of their overhead speakers if it says DTS-X.
Right, because they totally did that right the first time with Atmos, right? Because they have such a great history with their audio decoding and stuff that they'll surely they won't mess it up, right?
I don't know. But to the first part about there being Dolby Atmos in actual games, I mean, that already exists on PC. So that's great. Object-based audio for games makes all the sense in the world, and going with the industry standard, which I mean Dolby Atmos at this point is definitely the industry standard for immersive and object-based audio. So supporting that
And that shouldn't be a
That shouldn't
problem.
be
They
a
should be
problem.
able to do that because it's native to the game.
Yeah.
So Microsoft all it's got to do is
And there's
render
a,
it, which should be
a
fine.
headphone version of Dolby Atmos, so even for headphone players, you're still going to get,
Right.
positional audio when Dolby Atmos is actually in the game to begin with. Now, Dolby Vision, I mean, again, I don't have any problem with that. It's kind of a little bit interesting because we have this HGIG, the high definition gaming interest group, and both Xbox and PlayStation have started supporting that. And the whole idea is that you actually get a test pattern that you display on your television. On your television, if your television supports HGIG, then it actually turns off all of the television's tone mapping. And the test pattern lets you set the minimum and maximum on the console itself. And then all games are mapped within that minimum and maximum that you've mapped. It knows that's what your TV can handle. And now that all gets sent out within those goalposts there. That's the way HGIG works. Now, I suppose there are lots of TVs that don't support HGIG mode. So they would get whatever comes out of the console and try to tone map it again, which wouldn't be great. So if Dolby Vision is built into the game, then that's what's coming out. If you have a Dolby Vision TV, it's just going to tone map according to the Dolby Vision metadata. So that should be a good thing too. It does make an interesting little point though for me, which is that Microsoft and Samsung have usually paired up. Like in most of their demos, Microsoft uses Samsung TVs to show off their games. Well, Samsung has been the obvious holdout on Dolby Vision. I'm like, I wonder if this will be the thing that finally gets Samsung to start supporting Dolby Vision when the entire Xbox gaming community starts going, Samsung, why don't you support Dolby Vision? Maybe that'll finally get them on board.
All right, NVIDIA is buying ARM. Good, I guess. They need an ARM. Should most people get a hand, they get an ARM. NVIDIA is buying ARM for $40 billion. That's with a B. In cash and stocks. The current owner of ARM, SoftBank, will get a 10% stake in NVIDIA as a result. It's the largest acquisition NVIDIA has ever made, and it's happening just as Apple is transitioning its Mac computers to all ARM-based processors. Interesting.
Yes. It's also, SoftBank is in some financial trouble because one of their biggest investments is Uber, and Uber revenue has gone way down for some reason across the world. And so apparently they felt it necessary to sell off one of their investments, which are ARM-based processors. So yeah, there you go. But that's that NVIDIA is on the rise. That's the takeaway there.
So it turns out Apple likes money, so they're changing their App Store rules so that streaming gaming services like xCloud and Stadia can exist on Apple devices. No, they're going to get that much money from Stadia.
Yeah,
I've never seen anybody put so little effort in trying to make something a success as Google has put into Stadia. They're like, here's Stadia. What is it? Yeah.
Something we made. I don't know. Moving on. Yeah, we kind of predicted that one correctly, man. That has not rocked the gaming world.
They have put zero effort behind it. It is so pathetic to see them try to convince us that this is a thing that we need.
I still see news outlets describing Stadia as like Netflix for games. I'm like, no, it isn't. It would be Netflix for game if you had to pay for every individual movie that you watch on Netflix, because that's how Stadia works. It's like, nope. It's not, but xCloud kind of is. xCloud, you pay your month. I mean, it's part of Game Pass. That's just what it is now. So xCloud, you pay for your monthly Game Pass subscription, and every game that is available on xCloud, you can stream. So yeah, that kind of works. That's not bad. Yeah. So Apple, their former rules on the App Store said there was no way that such a service could work because they wanted every game to be listed individually.
Didn't they have some sort of big announcement today about their watches and iPads and stuff?
I thought that's tomorrow. We're recording this on Tuesday the 15th. I can't remember if it was. It might have been today. I haven't looked at Twitter all day today, so.
You're a good man for it. So we'll be behind. Obviously, the Apple announcement will also be behind the time, but we'll be behind the time when you hear this episode. But the Oculus Quest 2 headset promo videos were leaked. It'll have a Snapdragon XR2 processor, more memory, and higher resolution displays, which are expected to be the LCD instead of OLED, though, which kind of stinks. Expectations are that it will be a bit lighter and cost $399, and the standard color seems to be white now.
Yep, and a softer head strap. It does look like with that softer head strap, I mean, I'm just kind of looking at the slots that exist. I guess that's the USB port. I'm not in the current Oculus Quest. The sound comes out of some little slits that are actually on the head strap.
Oh, the band.
Yeah, close to your ears, because there aren't actual earphones. It's just little slits that are on the band. And now with this soft strap, I don't know if they can put the little slits in there. So I think they might be on the headset now. But anyway, yeah, Oculus Quest 2. You're going to have a Facebook account to use it now. Not super happy about that, but that's that.
Some comments from our listeners. Gurinder just needed to vent a bit. The ductwork about his drop tile ceiling.
Oh, that should be above. Sorry,
above. Okay,
that must be.
I just read.
Must be,
I just read what's there. I'm like Rod and Burgundy.
Autocorrect.
The ductwork above his drop tile ceiling is forcing him to offset the positions of his in-ceiling speakers. There's no way to make them symmetrical, which is going to bug him. But more than that, he's going to need to adjust the positioning of his T-bars to get the ceiling tiles aligned where they need to be. He can't believe how much work it's going to end up being. Wasn't a drop tile ceiling supposed to make all of this easy? You should remember, whenever we talk about drop tile ceilings, we say you should just install a drop tile ceiling. Anytime anybody says just, they don't know what the heck they're talking about. So, have you ever installed a drop tile ceiling?
A small sectional one, yeah, a small one. Yeah.
Okay, that is literally infinity more times than I have done it since I am 0. So, yes, I in theory, drop tiles will make, not in theory, in actuality, there are many things about a drop tile ceiling that will make your life easier. Running wires, changing positions of speakers, putting different types of absorption and diffusion up on the ceiling is all a lot easier with a drop tile ceiling. That is just the way it is, but it's not a panacea. It's not going to suddenly be, just
there's pipes, wires, particularly ducts, since ducts are the largest one, in the way of where you want to put something, then yeah, I suppose one solution might be the even they might not be enough, but the exceedingly shallow depth in-ceiling speakers that Kef sells, because they have some that are like, I think they're an inch and a quarter deep or something like that. They use the same driver technology as the T series, which is about the skinniest that speaker drivers can get. So those do exist, but they're not cheap. I think they start at $300 or $350 each or something like that. So they aren't cheap. But I wanted to just mention, because this tangentially brought this up for me, because I was like, oh, well, the clear solution I would be thinking of is on ceiling instead of in ceiling, right? When you've got stuff above your ceiling. But like, we've used to recommend the Focal birds all the time, but they got discontinued and went away. Then Accessories for Less started selling those Boston Acoustics Soundware 4.5s, which were a pretty decent replacement, but they don't have those anymore. They don't seem to be carrying any of the Bostons anymore, and that was a discontinued product as well that Accessories for Less was selling off the remaining stock. So those seem to be gone. And I can't find a really good replacement that's like the same type of form factor as the Little Birds or the Soundware 4.5s were at a nice, reasonable price. But for the time being, I'm probably going to be pointing people for now until we find a solution. Monoprice, they've got their like inexpensive. You'd actually have to buy it as a 5.1 set at the moment, but the 5.1 set is $220. So even if you're only using 4 of the satellite speakers, it's the HT35 from Monoprice. Even if you're using 4 of those satellite speakers, it's like basically $55 a piece, and you sell off the center and the little bass module that comes with it. But along with those, Video Secu has some good, a pair of ceiling mounts that just cost $20 for the pair. And one of the things is that little HT35 satellite Monoprice. On the back of it, it has a 1/4-inch threaded insert that works perfectly with the Video Secu mount, but it also has one of them on the bottom. So if you actually want to mount the speaker so that it's like aiming straight down, there's the L bracket that Video Secu has. It's like an option that comes with the package, and that you could actually screw into the bottom of the satellite so that it's like the back of it is right along your ceiling, and then the drivers are facing straight down with that little L bracket. So that's probably going to be my solution for an inexpensive on-ceiling option these days, just so people know.
Yeah, you could get those little cube ones from NHT as well, the Super Zero point. What are they? Not the Super Zeros, because the Super Zeros, is that right? The Super
Well, the
Zeros are those cubes?
Super Zero. No, they're not cubes. I mean, the Super Zeros are
No,
satellite speaker, $125 each.
right,
So not super
right, which is
cheap.
a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying,
Do they have?
as
I don't
a
know if they have
that
anything smaller right now. They've got an Atmos module for $99 each, but
hmm,
I don't think they have anything smaller than that right now over at NHT.
yeah,
Yeah, like I was saying, it's a
okay,
challenge to find something now that nicely replaces the little birds. But I guess there's Orb,
right.
but Orb audio isn't super cheap. So
No, no, I don't remember it being super
no,
cheap at
I think
all,
they're
unless they've
I think
changed
they're
their
like
pricing.
150 each or something. So
Yeah, that
yeah.
sounds right. All right, Jim. Jim has a super cheap backer box idea for in-ceiling speakers. He suggests with about a styrofoam cooler. Cut it to the desired height, put in some insulation, and seal it to the back of your drywall with some silicone adhesive. What do we think? I don't know how you get it in the wall,
Well, I think he's
Jim.
thinking ceiling. You know.
I don't know how you get it in the ceiling unless. Oh, you're talking about from
But
above.
if it's
Okay,
attic, I
like
don't
if you're
think
in
I
your
don't
attic.
think this is gonna pass fire code in an attic.
Well, not only that, but I mean, it should be fine. I mean, the flex that it would be the forces that it'll be under because within the drivers and stuff shouldn't be so much. But yeah, I wouldn't imagine that this was
Nah.
super under code
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, somebody's gonna go up there and go, "Oh, what?"
Yeah, no, my concern there is fire code. Like attic installation is where you need to be concerned about fire code. In some parts of the world, you have to have fire code specifications, even if it's in between floors. And a lot of places in the United States, you don't. So that might be a possibility. Say above a drop tile ceiling in your basement, you might not have to be concerned with fire safety code. I guess it could work for that type of scenario.
Yeah, yeah, that I guess that would work
Yeah.
there, right?
But don't do it in your
I don't
attic.
know.
I'm quite certain that wouldn't pass
Those
fire code.
those styrofoam things usually make a squeaky noise when they kind of
Mm-hmm.
move or you touch them and stuff. I would wonder what that would if it would do that as it flexed with any sort
Heat
of
or air.
pressure
Yeah.
changes.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Mark on Twitter, many of you may know Mark as the Wood Whisperer. He's a good friend of the HT guy, so he's been featured many times on HGTV and home theater podcasts. He wanted to share that he had a Mitsubishi mini split air conditioner installed in his shop, where he also records all of his content. Being quiet was his number one priority. He's happy to say that with the wall unit on low, it is quieter than the traditional duct-based HVAC in his house, and basically about the same noise level as the fan in the projector. Being that his shop is in his garage, the installation was not overly complicated. The outdoor compressor is about 10 feet away from the garage door. There are no issues at all in terms of hearing the compressor from inside. The installation costs around $8,000, and he thinks it would be a fantastic solution for a home theater. All right, then. There
Yeah.
you go. I was actually thinking a little bit more about this after we answered
Uh-huh.
that question, and uh, I see my parents won't let me in their house for obvious reasons, but they have two mini splits in there, and my initial reaction to this was my experience with the split unit that I had in Australia,
Mm.
which was a big unit that wasn't anywhere near being able to cool down as much as it was being
Mm.
asked to. So it was always on super
Mm.
high, and it was fairly
Yeah.
loud. But the more I thought about this, the more I thought that this actually could be a pretty good solution. And while there's no way we're gonna have enough money to do it anytime ever, it may be a solution I look for in my own home
Mm.
theater because I think it might actually work.
Yeah. Like anecdotally in the past, I had heard that Mitsubishi's units were among the quietest, but I didn't have any firsthand experience with them. This is still anecdotally, I suppose, coming from Mark, but a little bit more
Right.
firsthand, saying that this is what he has. He did the research. This was like quiet was the number one priority, and this is what he went with. So I'm willing to put some faith and some trust in that because I had heard about that previously elsewhere. That Mitsubishis are among the quietest, so that's good. Definitely worth keeping in mind. Definitely worth considering. I'm totally
Right.
willing to consider that. Yeah, and thank you, Mark.
Right. All right. So let's get to the questions here finally. Nick, Following right along with the topic of HVAC and mini splits, Nick has been talking with Ted White from Soundproofing Company. Nick was very interested in the dead vent solution, but Ted actually encouraged him to go with a Mitsubishi mini
Hmm.
split. Nick found it refreshing how forthright Ted was in describing how challenging and costly it can be to construct an effective dead vent system, and Ted shared that many of his customers have been happier with the end result of having a Mitsubishi mini split compared to those who attempted a dead vent system and wound up frustrated or disappointed. But there's more to consider. Nick has a geothermal system and regular ductwork for HVAC throughout his house. There is currently a supply register where his theater's seating area will be, but the space is still open right now, and Nick's plan is to seal up the theater airtight with extensive soundproofing. He has a plan underway for ventilation. But in terms of heating and cooling the room, his geothermal installer thinks it's crazy to remove the existing supply register, but Ted pointed out that Mitsubishi has mini split systems that provide both AC and heat pump functionality. So, okay, before we
Hmm.
go on, so Ted is dealing with one guy. No, Nick is dealing with Ted, who's the guy at Soundproofing
That's
Company,
correct.
right? And then he's dealing with a second guy who's a geothermal
Yes,
guy,
that's right.
right? Um, After dealing with two different general contractors, numerous individual workers coming into my
Yeah.
house, and a designer, it's like it is very much when you're dealing with all these professionals, like having is asking your kids what they want to eat, and all they'll say is, "I don't want what they're having."
Yeah.
Basically, whatever they said, I don't want. This is what's dealing with these are adults, and this is what it's like. It is absolutely infuriating. No matter what the designer says, the contractors are like, "Oh, that's
Mm.
impossible," and whatever the contractor says, the designer's like, "That's disgusting. You'll hate it." I'm like, okay, just will somebody please stop? So now onto the question. With both Ted and now Mark saying that the Mitsubishi mini split systems really can be quiet, our comments about them potentially being quite loud a couple of episodes ago don't line up. So what do we think now? We already said what we
Yeah.
thought now. That our experience, our experiences, my experience in particular, they were loud. But if you put a appropriately sized unit for
Yeah,
your
one that's
room and you keep it on
got
low,
the BTU capability to cool your room size with it set to low, right? I mean,
yes,
a fair number of caveats because an installer might say, well, here's the unit size that we typically install in your room, but you might discover that that size would require running it on medium or high to cool the room, which is
right,
fine. That's within spec. It's not like they lied to you. But if you really stress that what you need is to be able to run it on low and never above that, then you
right,
might need to go, one rung up or something like that to what would typically
right,
be for a room larger than yours, but it's because you want to run yours on low.
right. So, first of all, I don't know anything about geothermal.
Mm.
I mean, I know what it is. Clearly, I'm not an idiot, but I don't know what this guy is talking about. If the register can't be moved, or I don't, or if there's some sort of issue there, I don't really know. But if you're going to be using this unit to heat and cool this room alone, I don't really see what the problem is. I mean, I don't see why you need to have two sources of heat
Well, I think the
in
question is,
your
does
room.
he keep, this is actually moving on to the second question, but does he keep the existing ductwork that's already there in his house? Obviously, that would be
Hmm.
easier than removing it or altering it. Or does he, remove the existing ductwork that goes into what will become his sealed up theater area and install a Mitsubishi mini split instead? The ventilation, he's like, he can take care of that separately. He's already well looking into that. But in terms of the heating and cooling, and actually, if he keeps the existing ductwork, then he might not have to do the whole ventilation plan either, because that should be an HVAC, heating, ventilation, and a air conditioning system. So it
Right.
would probably be simpler and cheaper to keep the existing ductwork, which is actually on to the next question here. So,
Right. Let me read the
mhm.
next question, then we'll answer it. So, if he follows his geothermal installer's advice, will having his heating and cooling for the theater completely defeat his extensive soundproofing efforts? Is there some other solution he should look into instead? He previously liked the notion of heating and cooling just outside the theater and then exchanging that air with the theater, but Ted's advice about dead vents has pretty much convinced him not to do that anymore. What do we say? Uh, it doesn't completely, you're allowing a massive hole into your room. I mean, there's no getting
That is
around that.
connected
So,
via metal to everywhere else in your house.
right. So in order for that hole not to, allow as much, to reduce the amount of sound that's going to come out of there and enter from outside, you have to do a bunch of stuff. Right? You got to get the flexible tubing and maybe, put some turns in it
Yeah.
and, all sorts of other things. So if soundproofing is your number one thing, you seal that up. You just let it do the rest of the house, and you use the Mitsubishi for your room alone. I don't know what that's going to actually in functionality feel like. I don't know if you're going to walk into that room and during the summer it's going to be like roasting in there, or and then in the winter, you go in there and you can see your breath for the first 20 minutes while the
Oh, I see. If
the
it
the
hasn't been
the
running prior
system.
to you going in there. Mhm. I mean, if he
Right,
has a
right. Unless
ventilation system, it shouldn't be that extreme either way.
It shouldn't. It shouldn't. Right. It shouldn't. But what
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
saying.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know what in functionality would be. I mean, but these things also you can just set them just like a regular AC. You say I want the temperature between this and
Hmm.
this, and it'll kick on and off
Right.
as needed. So but then again, you could save electricity just by turning the thing off and not
Hmm.
running it when you're not in there. But what does that mean for the rest of your house? I
Yeah.
don't
Like,
know, or your actual use of the
Nick's
room.
situation is a little bit different than a lot because so we've had plenty of people saying, I want some soundproofing, but it doesn't have to be
Right.
like dead silent. And for those
Right. Right.
people, I would typically say having your normal HVAC system with normal ducting, but making sure that the branch that goes into your theater has one of those soft joints in it, right? So that's not solid metal
Right.
the whole way. Usually it's just a canvas joint that adds a flexible joint into whatever arm off of your ductwork that goes into your theater. As long as you have one of those, then you get a mechanical separation. You don't get the mechanical vibration going through your entire HVAC system. So that is a big part of it. And then as far as the air actually moving in and out, like it's not going to be the case where you're going to be hearing it loud throughout the rest of the house. Again, that mechanical separation with the flexible joint does a lot to help you there. So for most people, I would probably say that's fine, and that is almost certainly what your geothermal installer is thinking along the lines of saying, "Hey, I've never had somebody complain. Right? We put in the canvas joint to the ductwork, and that's all you need." But we happen to know that Nick is going for above and beyond soundproofing, beyond
Right.
what most people, even on this podcast, are aiming for. He's going for really, really quiet inside and outside of his theater. Essentially room within a room construction is what he's going for. So, because of that, and because this is what Ted White is telling you to do, and I do trust Ted's advice very highly. I think the mini split system might be the way to go, specifically in Nick's case. I don't want everyone to think that that's going to be the broad advice, but because of the extent Nick's trying to get to with his particular soundproofing setup, I think, yeah, you seal the room, you have no openings in or out.
Right. And my problem in my, I don't want to call it a problem. My thing in my home theater is that it's a fairly small home theater. It's as far away from
Hmm.
the AC unit as you can be in this house, and the projectors always put off a bunch of
Sure.
heat. I mean, that's just part of the deal. Plus all the other equipment that's in here. You get five people in here,
Yeah.
and halfway through a movie, everybody's
Yeah.
sweating. That's just all there is to it. And then you add Florida
Yeah.
summer to that. Okay, so put all that together, and that's why I'm thinking the mini split unit for this home theater.
Mm.
It's only because it gets very, very hot in here in the
Yeah.
summer. During the winter, it's fine. I love it during the winter, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I crack a window open, and I don't care how loud my movie is when I'm doing it because my neighbors don't seem to complain. So, I know that the neighbor that's on that side, you know, their garage is the closest thing to me, and then it's their kitchen, and their bedrooms are all the way on the other side
Hmm.
of the house. And I have actually asked them a couple times, like, "Have you guys ever heard stuff?" No, no, we never
Yeah.
heard anything. So, but it's, open the window during the winter, gets nice and cool in here, no big deal. But, we have only like 2 weeks of winter a year, so it's not like I get to enjoy that very often. Adam. Adam's room was 23 and a half by 11 by 7'10", 7 foot 10 inches high. This is very similar to my size of room. Mine's a little bit wider, I
Shorter. Yours is
believe.
shorter too, isn't it?
I don't think it's much
Okay.
shorter. I think it's right around that. It might be 21, but it's something like that. It's a little bit wider and maybe a tiny bit shorter. This was a full teardown with new framing done to make it a perfect enclosed rectangle. Double layer drywall should be going up this week. He's going with a 120-inch screen. You can sit in the back row. And the first row of seats is 10.5 feet away. A second row will be about 17 feet from the screen. Accounting for the depth of the back of the seats, that leaves us about 5 feet of space to the back wall. Okay. He is building a riser for the back row. It should extend all the way back to the back wall. It should just go to the back of the seats and then leave a taller section uh, in that back 5 feet behind the wall, and then leave a taller section. I don't know what
Right.
that
So
means, but
riser
whatever.
beneath the second row of seats, and then because there's 5 feet of space behind the seats, does he have no riser in that last 5 feet so he gets the full 7 foot 10 inch ceiling height, or does he continue the riser all the way to the back wall and essentially have a 6 foot 10 ceiling?
Well, I mean, do you have a lot of tall friends? Are you tall? I mean, that's that for me. For me, I'd be like, come see, come saw. I don't really care. You do what you want, because I'm 5'7", so it doesn't. It's not gonna bother me one way that. If it were my house, I would not extend the riser all the way to
Oh,
the
okay.
back wall. I don't see much of a point of that. I would just have it be on the seats, and then you walk kind of around it. Uh, but that would be me. That would be how I would
My
do it.
my inclination was to extend it all the way to the back wall. My main thinking was actually safety, because he's talking about having a 12-inch or possibly 14-inch riser. So that would
Right.
necessitate by code having a step. You have to have a step on the front by code because a step is not supposed to be higher than 7.5 inches. So that would necessitate you having a step on the back as well. And then I'm like, it's a theater. It's in the dark. If someone is going around the back of the seats, I'm like, I don't really know that I want a 12-inch drop behind my seats when, if I'm building this riser, I could just extend it to the back. I'm also thinking with 5 feet of space behind you, if you ever want to put some like bar stools behind that second row of seats, then you can just put some bar stools behind them on the riser behind you. The riser is the same height all the way, but the bar stools are taller. So someone sitting back there, they might be pretty close to that 6 foot 10 inch ceiling, but sitting down on a bar stool, you're not that tall. So that was my thinking there. That if it's DIY, I'm just going to extend it all the way to the back. But I don't know. I think the argument could be kind of made either way.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see what you're saying. My thought is, I see what you're saying about safety, but uh, my thought is that I'd rather be able to, just kind of walk past there. But I could see, I could see what you're
Hmm.
saying. I could see that. So he asked, should he make the riser freestanding or should it attach to the walls? One thing he does not want to do is fully carpet the entire floor and then build a riser on top of the carpet. He also doesn't want the riser to look as though it's just a floating platform, but it would be easy enough to make it appear as though it is built in by just extending the carpet on the top of the riser and having a baseboard on the walls to hide the seam. So what do we think is the best approach? And if it's freestanding, what's the best way to hide the tiny gap between the riser and the walls? So it is going to go wall to wall.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
what you're
And if he does
suggesting?
extend it to the back wall, it'll go all the way to the back wall too. So
Right. Yeah, if you're gonna have it go all the way from wall to wall, because I was just thinking it was gonna be underneath the couch,
well, I think
then I
this
would.
being only 11 feet wide, he was. I mean, certainly the way he was talking about hiding the seam against the
Right.
walls, then this is a wall to wall riser.
Yeah. Then in this case, if you're gonna do it, it's gonna go all the way. First of all, how are you gonna make it freestanding and make it look built in? It just doesn't.
Well, I
You know.
mean, it is a platform that is like in theory removable. As in it's not literally attached to the walls, built to them. And then yeah, if it is more or less right up against the walls, then
So why would you even want it to be free? I mean, okay, free. I guess. Well, I guess my conundrum here is that I'm thinking of freestanding differently. I'm thinking freestanding is in that you can move it around.
no,
That's what
not
my thought. When you said
yeah.
freestanding, I'm thinking he wants to be able to move it around. I'm like, okay, well, if you just build it right underneath the couch and then it's freestanding, then you can slide it theoretically around and move it if you don't like the placement of
No, it's
the
more like
couch.
there's videos on YouTube where like people put they drilled right into the walls, they attach directly to the walls, and that's actually what holds the riser, right? So instead of having,
Yeah.
feet or joists or building it like a deck or anything, it's actually like the perimeter of the room is what holds the riser where it is. So he's like, does he build it that way where it's part of the structure of the room, or does he just make a platform that in theory you could remove?
Well, he's already made this decision for himself because he doesn't want to build it and then have it sit on top of the
Mm-hmm.
carpet, which means he wants it to be built in.
Mm.
He wants it to look built in. Therefore, why don't you just build it in? And if it's going to be the entire back of your room, like Rob suggests, I have a hard time with this whole thing because the dimensions are so close to my room that I think of my room, and I'm like, how am I going to get into the bathroom? Because the
He
bathroom
doesn't
door is
have
back
something at
there.
the back, apparently.
He didn't have anything at the back of the room, so I would just build it in and
Okay.
just have it be the entire back of your room, the way Rob
Yeah,
said.
I mean, I emailed him back because he was like, this might get built quite soon. So it was just in the name of timeliness. And I said right away in that email that my personal opinions on seating risers are not the most popular. I don't follow the sort of the most popular advice. I want a riser that I would have to basically be inert. I don't want it to move. I don't want it to vibrate. I don't want it to make noises. I don't want it to do anything besides be a sturdy structure to hold the seats. And I don't want it touching the walls. I want it just like its own solid little chunk platform that the seats sit on. And that's what I personally want with a riser. So the way I would construct it would be to actually just have a flat plywood surface on the bottom, because a lot of riser construction, they just have, joists on the bottom or stands on the bottom. But I would have a flat piece of plywood on the bottom. Since you don't want to build it over carpet, I would put a layer of like, the sort of rubberized matting onto your subfloor, and then a layer of plywood. Then I would just have, 2x12 joists with cross bracing, because I want it as sturdy as possible. Then, a platform on top of that, carpet over all of that. And I would probably fill up half of that thing with sand to make it completely inert. That's the way I would come at a riser, but I know that isn't the popular advice. So what Tom is saying about if you want this to look and act as though it's built into your room, then just go ahead and build it into your room. That also makes sense. Of course, assuming that you're, obviously that's the way the room is going to stay. There's no taking
Well,
it
that's
out.
the thing. You're the problem I have with risers that are built in is I'm always thinking of
Yeah,
the future, and I don't like to do anything that's gonna fundamentally change the house in a way that's 'cause people are gonna walk in and go, well, I can't buy this
sure.
house now. you know, I mean, you're taking essentially, I'm guessing what is a bedroom size, a fairly large size bedroom, which is, for America, it's usually what a normal, kid's bed or room or normal bedroom office would be 10 by 11. So you're taking something that's double
Mm-hmm.
that size and you're making it custom for this one
Mm-hmm.
purpose. Uh, or you've got a platform in the room and people are going to have to decide whether or not that's something that they want to have in their bedroom or their kid's bedroom or their office or whatever. It may be fine. It may be no big deal. But it's always easier to say, oh, that platform is not connected to anything. It's just carpeted to look like it is. So you could just pick that thing, you take the couches off, pick it up, throw it out, and you've got carpet underneath. Now the carpet will be crushed,
Yeah.
but nobody will think about that while they're buying the place. They'll figure that out
Yeah.
later. You know, so
If you,
it's easy to recarpet that room too
oh yeah.
afterwards. So when I think of risers, I'm always like, I want it to be removable.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be easily removable so that when I'm selling the house later, I can say that to people. But if this is something, I mean, this is the same guy who's doing the soundproofing,
Nope.
right?
New question.
No, this is a different guy. Okay, so I mean, if you don't care about any of that, or this is going to be your forever house, just build it in.
Okay.
Just just build it into the wall.
And
That's what I
if
say.
you go with my suggestion and it is not built in, so you will have this like a very small, like a half-inch or three-quarter-inch gap between the side of the platform and the side of the wall, I would put some more of that rubberized underlayment that goes underneath the flat bottom that I would have. I would just put some of that in there so that you don't get bugs and dust and craziness in that little half-inch gap.
Hmm. All right. He'd like the riser to be about a foot high. He's seen a lot of different plans for risers, including making the perimeter out of 2x12s and then making all the stringers in the middle 2x10s or 2x8s so that there's an air gap underneath. Should he do that? And what about putting vents in the riser and insulation inside to make it into a bass trap? We've talked about that a bunch. I don't, first of all, the idea of turning it into like an actual bass trap is something that sounds really good on paper, but in functionality doesn't really work as well as you want
Nope.
it to. All I really care about my risers is I want it to feel like a
Yeah.
floor, which means I don't want it to move when my subs
Yep.
hit. And you're putting together all this stuff. You're gonna have this nice theater with 2 rows of seats and a 120-inch screen. The last thing you want to do is have somebody say, "Well, why is my chair vibrating? Why does it feel weird?" Because that's exactly the way that I've seen risers that are supposed to be bass traps do. They
Yep.
shake. They're just not they're not
Things that
inert.
flex and
And
let air into them and all that kind of stuff. It becomes a
yeah,
resonant nightmare, and I'm not a fan of it. I mean, there is such a thing as a properly constructed and tuned bass trap that happens to double as a riser, but getting all of those apertures correct and all the air pathways inside exactly right and all that, like, I'm just like, nah, forget it. Just put cross braced joists that go all the way down to the floor, the perimeter and the stringers. All of them are equal. They all sit on the floor, they all have cross bracing, and the whole thing is just damped and inert, and then you don't have to worry about any of that.
right. He wants to have one of his subwoofers at the back of the room. Any special considerations if it's going to be sitting on top of the riser for people who have made bouncy risers? He's seen the suggestion to make a square underneath the subwoofer that is filled with sand and sort of separated from the rest of the riser. But if the whole thing is going to be sturdy, does he need anything more, or will some decoupling feet on the subwoofer be sufficient? If it's inert, you should just the sound path isolation feet is
Yep,
all you'll
that's
need.
all you should need with the
Yeah.
type of riser that both Tom and I like.
Why don't you just pour some concrete back there? Ever thought of that? Just do
Yeah,
that.
true.
Just it's a
Although
lot
concrete
easier.
is not inert, but
Yeah, it's more inert than some of these
well,
risers are. That's
definitely
for
than the
sure.
bouncy risers, no question about that.
He has pre-wired the room for a 7.2.6, but he is using a Denon 3600H, which can power 5.2.4 on its own or expand to 7.2.4 with an external amp. He also has 2 pairs of side surround speakers, one for each row of seats, and he has an older Onkyo receiver on hand with 7.1 analog inputs. So what's the best way to deploy all of this? He was thinking that he might use Y splitters on the surround pre-outs of his X3600H. That way each surround speaker, 4 in total, could have its own amplifier, and 2 more channels, either top rears or front left and right, could be powered by the Onkyo, leaving the Denon to power everything else. But he also has those pre-wires for 6 overheads. Is there any way to use all of them with just one external amplifier, or would he need a third receiver to matrix sounds for the top middles between the top fronts and top rears? Or could he just duplicate top middles above both rows of seats, or would that sound weird? Uh, I don't know if it would sound weird. Now, you need 2 receivers to do the thing that you're talking about with. You need
3
three
receivers
receivers to do the
total.
thing you're
Yeah,
talking.
if you
Total,
want
you
to
need 2
take
additional receivers.
yeah, if you want to take the top front and top rear pre-outs that come out of your Denon, the left side you would feed into one Pro Logic receiver, which would then matrix out a center that you would call your top middle, and then the right side would have a third AV receiver, which would also Dolby Pro Logic out and matrix out a center that you would call the top middle on the right hand side. So you would have a left hand side receiver and a right hand side receiver if you want to get 6 discrete overhead speakers going. We did have that one fellow
Right.
who just duplicated top middles. So he had top middles that were over his rear seats and top middles that were over his front seats, and then front heights out in front of his front seats. And he was quite happy with it because his number one thing is that he wanted to have it sound as though stuff was coming from directly above him in both rows of
Right.
seats. So if that is your desire, if that's the effect that you want most, then I'm not opposed to just duplicating the top middles. Now, I mean, you can just connect those in series to whatever amplifier you're using to power them. That could be the Denon directly, if you choose to power your front, left, right speakers externally, say. It's also not necessary. I mean, this room is not large and your sidewalls are close
Right.
to you. It's an 11-foot wide room. So it's not necessary for each side surround speaker to have its own amplifier. You could connect the left pair in series to one amplifier, the surround amplifier on the left and the same on the right. Just connect them in series. With a room this narrow, that's not going to be any kind of problem for either the Denon or the Onkyo, however you want to do it. So I wouldn't say you need a Y splitter on the pre-out for the surrounds so that they each have their own amplifier. Certainly not in this case with the room this small.
Yeah, I don't really see. I mean, he's got the extra amplification
That's true.
channels there. If you want to use them, you know, go with God.
Mm-hmm.
You have our blessing. But like Rob said, you don't really need to. So don't, if it were me, I'd value the rack space over
Sure.
having just being able to power a couple of side
But
surrounds
like,
and
given that all
whatever
you
else.
need is a Dolby Pro Logic receiver, I mean, you can just find something super cheap on eBay or Craigslist or something, I'm sure, because that doesn't have
Right.
to be an advanced, expensive AV receiver. And if you want to give that a go so that you are matrixing top middles on the left side and the right side, you could do that for pretty cheap.
Hmm. Sean. Sean's parents are buying a new TV and their max budget is $1,000. They'd like as large as possible, at least 65 inches, 75 if possible. They are aware that budget won't allow them to get the best at that screen size, but they would like the best bang for the buck. Could we provide a couple of suggestions? I'm going to look into my silver ball here and say Vizio and maybe TCL.
Yeah, there's going to be in there. I mean, so certainly at 65 inches, this is not a problem. You can get a pretty darn good TV for $1,000 at the 65-inch size. The 75-inch size, it's a challenge. And I know you're going to say, well, I can just look at Best Buy or Costco or Amazon and find 75-inch TVs for under $1,000 pretty easily. And you can, but there's none of them that I would heartily recommend. They just
Right.
they're not terrific looking. When you get that large, if you have unevenness in the lighting of the screen, which is definitely a
Sure.
problem at that size, you really see it. And I'm not super happy to recommend a lot of those. So I'll start with the 75s because there's only two that I would probably point you to, and both of them are at this time over $1,000. Maybe if you wait till Black Friday or something, these might drop down because both of these are from Chinese brands. The first is Hisense's H8G. What I like here is that it does have a full array backlight. Technically, it has local dimming, but it's like 16 zones or something. But the point is that it's not edge lit. It's a full array backlight on that Hisense H8G, and it's a pretty decent television. It runs Android TV as the operating system, so that's pretty easy to use and has a lot of apps. And it's going for $1,250 right now, so it's above the $1,000 price point. The other one, the one that I would probably like, the one I would probably say in the 75-inch size as bang for buck, is the TCL 6 series. They're now on the R635. It has actually quite a it has, I forget exactly how many local dimmings. I think it's like 192 or something like that. Or actually, you know what? This is the new mini LED backlight thing. So it's got several hundred local dimming zones on that thing. Quite impressive. Quantum dot, full color and everything, but it's $1,400. So I mean, it's almost 50%. It's 40% above your desired budget for the 75-inch size. Now, if we drop down to 65 inches, you can get that same TCL 6 series, the R635, for $900 right now at the 65-inch size. And if you have to stay below $1,000, that's probably where I'm going to point you right now, because it's a really good looking TV for $900. It's the 65-inch size. Vizio is definitely here. In a 65-inch size, you could go even less expensive with their M65. Now, in Vizio's M series, there's an M7 and there's an M8, and you definitely want the M8, which is only sold at certain retailers. One of them is Walmart, and the 65-inch M8 over at Walmart is $780. So that's probably like the least expensive, but it's a very good TV for $780, but it's not available in a 65-inch size. So yeah, you could consider a Vizio P series, but that puts you over $1,000 even for the 65-inchers. So it's probably going to be the TCL. To me, that is the bang for buck champion. It runs Roku, so it's a very nice and easy system to use. And yeah, if it's got to be under 1,000, the 65-incher is $900.
Okay. Matt and his wife moved into a new house about a year ago. The basement was completely unfinished, so this year's project is to finish the basement. On one side of the basement, it will be the home theater, while the other side will be a bar. His wife doesn't want any visible wires, and the look has to be very clean, so he's going in walls for speakers. He's aiming for a 5.2.2 configuration with a 120-inch acoustically transparent screen. He's in the rural area, so there's only one audio video store within reasonable driving distance, and their only
Oh, yeah.
in-wall
Sorry.
speakers they carry are Paradigm, and they're more expensive than he would like. He's considering Polk in-walls that he could order online, but figured he'd better ask us first. So what in-wall speakers would we recommend? He'd like to keep the cost below $200 per speaker. So we normally recommend Aperion here, don't we?
We did, but
But
they've completely replaced their lineup of in-wall speakers,
ugh,
and I'm not super impressed with the new ones. The driver quality looks to have gone down while the price has gone up a little bit. I mean, you can get their 6.5-inch size for $162 each, so it fits within the budget. But I'm not super impressed with the new Aperion series. So I mean, my first thought here was, since this sounds like it's a fairly open space, I don't know the exact size, but it sounds like it's not tiny. And within walls, you're going to wind up a little bit farther away from your speakers than if they were in the room with you. All of that leads me to saying, you know what, some pretty efficient speakers might not be a bad choice here. And barring that, I just like the way they sound, and that's HSU, Shu. Their in-wall speakers, the HIW ones. Now, they only list them in pairs. I think if you actually call them, that they are able to send you a single, because you only want 7 of them.
right.
But they only list them in pairs, but they list them as $300 a pair, so $150 each. So that fits the budget. I like their sound quality and efficiency, and yeah, HSU's in-wall speakers are where I would personally be pointing you. But I don't know if Tom has another suggestion.
Uh, no. I mean, this is one of those times where I would be, because I know that you want to go for that clean
Yeah,
look. Uh, let's be reasonable as far as what clean looks like in a home theater. I know that, that in-wall look, everybody's like, yeah, I want that. Um, it's not invisible. It's never
not
invisible. There's always a
invisible, but
grill involved, right? And even if you paint said grill, and believe me, painting said grill is not as easy as you think it's going to be. It usually involves paint and then a toothpick
uh-huh.
to knock the paint out between each of the little metal
Yeah,
holes that you've just filled with paint. So, on top of that, you're now, if you're going to go with a projector, which you probably are, I would
I don't
think,
know. Oh, 120
maybe
inch, you
not.
said. Yeah, acoustically transparent.
Yeah, then you're now paying extra for the acoustically transparent
Mm-hmm.
screen, and there's that to deal with. You're still not without wires because you've got a projector, and unless you're going to put that in some sort of hush box or cover it in some way, which adds even more expense, you're talking about having wires exposed in some way, anyways. So, what is it really super important that you have zero visible speakers, or is it more important that you have speakers that, if they are going to be visible, are going to be aesthetically
Sure.
pleasing? Because in this case, the thing you have not done, and don't lie and say you have because you haven't, is you have not located your studs and found
Mm.
out if the places where you have visually looked at the wall and said it will go there and there and there and there and there and there and it will all work perfectly. I 5 of those places have a stud smack dab in the middle of it,
Or a pipe, or
or
a
at least a stud,
duct, or
or a
wire.
or yeah, or Romex running right through it. You know, you cannot place these where you
Mm.
want to place them unless you are tearing down the room and are able to reinstall things wherever you want. Now, he said he had a basement, right? This is a
Yep, this is a
basement
basement. This is finishing
theater,
the basement, actually. So
so maybe he
maybe
does
so.
have
Yeah, yeah.
the ability to have that. I don't know, but uh, just be sure that all your plans and all the extra money, like, hey, I can get this speaker for this amount of money that goes in the wall, and we have one option. Or you can pick from everything you see here, and we'll put it right next to the wall with this. You won't even see a wire. It'll just be right there on a little shelf or on, right there, and it'll be fine. So we can come up with a ton of options for you that will help you get really good sound for the same amount of money, if not less, and save you money in the long run on your projector screen, on a bunch of other stuff that we could come up with. Uh, or you could buy the one speaker that Rob just came up with.
I mean,
It's
a,
pretty much your
along
option.
the lines of what Tom just said, you might opt for on wall instead of in wall
Yeah.
because again, I mean, there as long as your wires are run inside the walls, you're not going to see the wires. It is a very clean look. It is not flush to the wall, but it is a very clean look. There again, I'm still thinking that reasonably sized and quite efficient would be beneficial in this setup. So Klipsch's reference Premiere on wall speakers are ones that I can wholeheartedly recommend. I think they sound very good. And they're a very reasonable, sleek looking design. So check those out. HSU's in walls, if you do know that the stud positioning and pipe and wire and duct positioning is all going to be okay with that. But if on walls turn out to be a better solution, then have a look at Klipsch's reference Premiere on walls.
Yeah. So for the bar, he wants to have 3 TVs, one 65-inch and two 55-inch. So pretty much be for sports and not much else. Definitely not critical viewing, but it will be a well-lit area adjacent to an outdoor walkout with sunlight coming in, so brightness will be a factor. He's considering the TCL 4 series since they're so inexpensive, but would it be worth paying more? Maybe the TCL 5 series or even 6 series? Or would we point to some other brand entirely? What do we recommend? Well, you want LCD and you want something that's super bright. So that's that. I thought the 4 series was edge lit. Am I wrong
4
about
series is
that?
edge lit, and it is by today's standards downright dim. Like it barely hits
Okay.
200 nits at the best of times. I struggle to be okay with suggesting pretty much anybody gets the TCL 4 series. I'm not a big fan. The 5 series is still edge lit, but it's a pretty reasonable for a very low cost. It's like $400 for the 55
Hmm.
inch. To me, that's worth the $100 over the 4 series. Like it really is. So I would be okay at the TCL 5 series. There isn't anything else at that same price that's just as good. So I would be okay with that as my minimum would be a TCL 5 series. That kind of is that.
Yeah. Okay. Ted. So Ted's got a rant. Rob sent me this. Actually, I got my email working.
Huh,
Don't have I talked about this
no.
yet on this podcast? I haven't, right? Yeah. So after months, literally, of me stalling because I had a whole bunch of emails on my Mac that I needed to get into my PC laptop. I finally gave up and decided, okay, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna figure out I'm gonna do it. So I, you know, I just I started looking at the stuff again and started getting into it and everything. And I realized it's never gonna happen. I don't know what I was thinking. So I decided my solution was gonna be I'm gonna keep my Mac forever.
Okay.
And then if I need something that's on it, I will power it back up and crank like the old
Yep.
timey record players. I'll crank it to get it going again or whatever. So I got the 2 email addresses I care about, my personal email address and then the AVRant email address working on this computer. And what I did, apparently, every email that I had ever gotten to those email addresses were still on the server
Okay.
someplace. So because this is a new computer, I got emails from like 2011
Nice.
all downloaded. So yeah, it had the server had deleted some of them based on my deletion of them. So many, many, many thousands of emails were deleted, and many, many additional thousands of emails were already posted as read.
Yeah.
Like I had read them, but about 12,000
Nice.
were unread messages. So
No
yeah,
inbox zero for you.
no, I went through the last however many months it was since I did this and cleaned that up, and then everything else I just said mark as read. So the emails I cared about are in there someplace. They're just not in the boxes that I had them in, the folders and stuff I had them in. So far. Anyway, so I got this from Rob, and I also got it eventually from Ted. Anyways, it was a big wall of text, and I told Rob I wasn't going to read it because it's too long, and I've
And
got
even my summary is a big
too
wall
many
of
things,
text.
too many things to do. It's just too many. It's just too many things with school and everything else with the kids. So, in fact, my wife is currently texting me right now to tell me to do things when I get home. It's like, don't forget when you get home to do this. I'm like, Jesus, woman, it's 11 o'clock at night. Give me a break. Go to bed. So Ted's got a rant. First up, Ted bought a new house. They will hopefully be closing at the end of this month, so all of his Atmos and other upgrade plans are on hold until he's into his new home. But first, let's just talk about that. Can we just start
Oh,
there?
okay.
All of this agonizing over this weird long, wider than this long room and everything else, and all the placement issues he's been having and everything else. Now we get to do it
Yep.
again at a new
Mm,
house. Pick a better room this time, Ted.
that's the hope.
So he's already got his 3-channel D-Sonic Class D amp that can supply 800 watts per channel into his 4-ohm Legacy Audio Silhouette speakers, and he spent several hours critically listening to his reference music material and movies. He has come to the conclusion that adding this external amplification to his Denon receiver was not a night and day difference, but it was still a definite improvement. He put the number of it at about 15% improvement. All right, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that means. So clearly audible, and for his taste, worth the $1,250 he paid, $1,250 he paid. He came to the conclusion that he wanted this many watts after reading Matt Poe's articles over at Audioholics about spatial cues and speech intelligibility, as well as Bill Donaldson's, from Legacy Audio, of course, videos on amplification and what is mathematically needed for the dynamic range offered by 24-bit audio.
Mm.
But of course, we most often say, not most often,
Yeah.
all, I mean, I guess
No,
technically there are
once
occasions
in a
we
while
say
we
that
say it's needed. So most often.
we most often say that external amplification is not necessary, and we directly told Ted that he absolutely did not need it in his very small room with his close seating distance. After his critical listening session, Ted did not find our advice to match up with his experience. So he thinks that our focus on spending as little as possible might be limiting the experience for people who are following our advice. We sound like we are trying to justify not spending more as opposed to having tried it under controlled conditions and reaching honest conclusions. Ted has been okay, here we go. Ted has been a recording artist and he runs a data engineering team. He does not believe in pseudoscience and takes the placebo effect seriously. He spends a lot of time in his work trying to convince others to base decisions off data. He went to lengths to create a quiet, acoustically treated room with excellent speakers, painstaking positioning, which we all know about because we were part of the pain, lossless audio sources, and defeating Odyssey above 500 hertz. He has spoken at length about amplification with experts like Gene over Audioholics. And after all of it, listening for himself, he hears better clarity in the transients and more control over reverb and decay in higher frequencies. He found himself lowering his volume by 2 or 3 dB because of the snap of snare drums, and other sharp transients were too strong at his previous reference level. He feels the added dynamic range and high frequency clarity we have widened the sound stage because the spatial cues are clearer. So the main thing is our advice did not line up with his listening experience. He researched his research into needing this many watts for completely accurate transients and spatial cues seems to be on the money, and we might be giving people bad advice that is holding back the maximum performance of people's theaters. So, are we willing to change? No. Not even a little bit, Ted. Ted, I love you, man. I do, and you've been a long time listener to this
Mm.
podcast, and I don't want you to be mad at me. But no, I am not willing to change. I have done the exact same things that you have done. I have had I have had many big amplifiers in my home theaters over time, and never, ever have I been able to objectively say, or even subjectively say, that the difference that I heard, which sometimes I did hear differences,
Sure.
were because the number of watts was bigger,
Yeah.
which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
You were saying that the number of watts has made all these
Yeah.
differences. Now, I will say the first thing that I thought when you said I had to turn down the dB, that my receiver, the volume level, because the snap of the snare drums was now too loud or too something, too snappy. or whatever, that that was a big warning sign to me that something was going on with this new amplifier that was creating some level of distortion at the high and the high frequencies of the hearing range. And I would not be shocked to find that to be the case with a D class
Yeah.
amplifier. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case. I am saying that every time I have put a D-class amplifier into my system, I have heard a difference, and every single time that difference was distortion,
Mm.
and it had nothing to do with the number of watts. And believe me, those watts were big. Those were big watts, Ted, big ones. Now, objectively, mathematically, you are not using those number of
Mm-hmm.
watts. It is not
Now,
happening. You are not sitting far away
in
enough
that
away.
part, he is taking some of this stuff that's been talked about by Matt Pose and Bill Duddiston and others as well, saying that okay, if you just crunch the numbers, right? If you have 24-bit audio sources, which can theoretically get up to what is it, over 120 dB theoretically, a peak could be that could be contained in that amount of data. And then you were playing that even sitting as close as he is to his speakers, but at full reference volume and trying to get all the way up there. That, yes, because every 3 decibels requires twice as many watts, you can very, very quickly get from, okay, 100 watts gives me 101 or 103 decibels or something like that. But to get up to 120, I'm into, kilowatts of power that is theoretically needed.
Right.
Now, everybody's saying that's only for transients, which means it's these tiny little millisecond events. So we're not talking about sustained power at that point. But he's just saying mathematically that's where this whole idea of needing 800 watts in his case came from. Just to clarify that.
Okay. I thought you were going to go on.
Oh well,
I
have much more to say. So if you're okay
well,
with
yeah.
me saying it, but
No. I mean, let's just talk about let's just talk it through. I mean, what happens whenever you buy new gear or have a new experience like that is and we've talked about this many times on the podcast. You sit down and have with your glass of whiskey or scotch or whatever, or your beer, and your red wine, or maybe all of them. I don't know, alcoholic maybe. It sounds like it, but you sit down and you start listening critically, and you're like, wow, I've never really noticed that before. Right, because you haven't actually played any of this stuff in like 3 months, or in my case, years sometimes. It goes a long time between listening sessions. To really, really, really do the kind of listening test that you're talking about, and yes, of course, we could talk about blind versus not blind, that sort of thing, but to really do this and to be good at it, and to say I know that I'm hearing a difference between this piece of gear and this piece of gear, or in my case, this speaker and this other speaker. The only way to do it is to have done it like like an athlete. You practice over and over and over and over and over again. And there were times in my reviewing career where I was like just getting new speakers every
mm-hmm.
week, and I was listening to the same stuff every week. And then I would walk into a place, and I remember I went to like a listening session at somebody's house way back in the day, and I walked in, I put on some stuff, and people were like, "This is all terrible." I'm like, "I know, isn't it? I've been listening to it for months." Uh, and I could clearly delineate the differences to you. I could do my listening tests. I would take longer, but I could run through them in about, not including CD changes and stuff like that. If I just had the tracks on one CD, I could probably get all I needed to get for a review in under 3 minutes.
Okay.
I mean, it was just that, just these little snippets, and I had done it so often. You haven't done that. I refuse to believe it. You have a life, right? You have a life, and that's great, and everyone should have one. My life at that time was reviewing speakers, so I was doing it. But I wouldn't say that I could do it right now because I haven't been doing it. It is something that you have to, really keep up on. So to say I sat down and I heard a difference, well, yeah, of course you did, dude. You sat down and you listened for the first time in quite some time. And, are you flipping back and forth? Did you take the amplifier out and then recalibrate everything? Did you do all of that?
Well,
I mean,
that would have to be an instantaneous A/B comparison to really be a valid comparison
well,
for audio and
So, okay, before we get too far down that rabbit hole, we talk about this a lot, or it's been mentioned a lot that you have to do a blind test. It has to be A/B. You do not have to do a blind test, or it does not have to be an ABX comparison in order for you to hear an obvious
Okay, sure.
difference, right? This is, this is the thing where I say where if the woofer is blown, you don't have to close your eyes to know
Right,
to
sure.
figure this
Yes.
out. It's very, very obvious. He's saying there's a 15% difference here. And it was enough that it was clearly
Okay.
audible. If that were really true, it would mean that you would not have to do an ABX
Sure.
test. But what I'm saying is that he has that most people who are in this situation don't even get close to doing anything like this. They just, I hear a difference. I knew I was right, and that's
Yeah,
it.
so So
So
I have a
go
fair
ahead.
amount to say, so I'll do my rant part of it. I mean, Ted tries to say that he's not prone to, the pseudoscience or being, pre-biased against something like that with his experience. I mean, I will just lay it out there that like he spent a lot of time describing all the things that have convinced him that he needs this amount of amplification. Then lo and behold, when he listens to it, he hears all the things that were described, which are not in line with a lot of the things that most people describe when they upgraded their amplification, because most people focus on the bass suddenly got tighter and cleaner again, which
Yeah.
is questionable, but that's what most people are focusing on. He's like, no, it was the high frequencies because I was reading about transients and spatial cues. And I'm like, please try to identify a spatial cue blind to me, because that is, wow, that is a thing. But I will put that aside. I will put aside the whole blind versus sighted testing and say, okay, maybe there really truly was a difference here. That you could do a direct A/B comparison, instantaneously switching, and every single time you can identify that it was either the Den empowering it with its built-in amps or this D-Sonic amplifier, and there was no question about it. 100% of the time you could tell them apart. Okay, now there is the fallacy in thinking about scientific method where you say, I changed one thing in this signal chain. There is a real difference, so therefore that one thing must have made the difference. And it's like, well, yes, it probably is responsible for the difference occurring, but is it the only way to achieve that difference? Is this that there is nothing you could have done with your previous system to get the same results, or is it that this is just pre-tuned in whatever sense to give you this particular result and the other one isn't? So when you're saying, okay, all of a sudden the transients sounded louder to me, I'm like, well, is that just because this amplifier inherently sounds different, like it has non-linear frequency response in the upper end?
Right, which is what I suspect.
In
Yeah.
other words, could you recreate this with your Denon by, say, not cutting off Odyssey at 500 hertz, instead applying EQ all the way up into the treble and simply giving it a 3 decibel boost in the treble, and then all your spatial cues and transients would actually sound exactly the same, meaning all of these extra amplifier watts are not the thing that did it. It was something in the frequency response that did it. So I wanted to mention that, listening on YouTube or reading what I'm sort of calling now the new guard of podcasters, because there's a whole group over there now, younger guys, and it's awesome to see younger guys who are getting into it and talking about it and sharing their journey in home theater. I'm sort of thinking of like Tom and myself and like the HT guys as like the old guard now. Like we've been doing this for over a decade, and we've kind of formed our opinions. And it to me it's interesting, like guys like Youthman and Techno Dad and Spare Change and them. It's like, they're getting all these products in for review. They're excited about it. They're saying, I heard this thing when I changed out this preamp. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not because of the preamp. Like,
Right.
so it's identifying what actually caused the difference is not inherent to the product itself. And so that's where we come into understanding what's actually going on with this Class D amplifier. Because I looked up this D-Sonic, and it seems to use the Pascal Class D modules, which are a modification of the ICE block amplifiers that were originally made by Bang & Olufsen. And in Pascal's own literature about these, you can see that above 1 kilohertz, the output impedance of this Class D amplifier shoots up exponentially, which, because its output impedance is exceedingly low everywhere below 1 kilohertz, is still not problematic unless you have speakers with low impedance at high frequencies, which ribbon speakers do, and you have ribbon speakers. Right. And that in a worst case scenario, if they start getting too close in range, you can actually end up with oscillations in the electricity going back and forth between the tweeter and amplifier. You aren't at that point yet with the specs that I'm looking at there, but it can lead to a nonlinearity in the treble, which is pretty common with Class D amplifiers and low impedance speakers, particularly low impedance at high frequencies. And I think that is what is responsible for what you're hearing. Again, I think if you had basically just boosted with equalization the treble, that you would have heard this same result. So the whole thing of, are we giving bad advice? Are we just saying we don't want to spend the money because we want to justify not spending more money? Tom and I have both been through a heck of a lot of as close as you can get to objective listening, ABX comparisons. And we sort of became disillusioned, I would say, maybe lost some of our excitement for the new gear luster, although both of us still fell down the rabbit holes of, well, if I just pay this much more, I can get this amplifier with this many more watts and this higher signal to noise ratio. We both did that, and then I didn't, and Tom did, try to calm ourselves down and get what we actually know that we need, because we've been through the experience of actually doing the blind testing and being like, oh, I can't hear what I thought I could hear, or I can't see what I thought I could see. When I first started, I was like, oh yeah, this power conditioner made the blacks on my television look better. Yeah, I'll admit it. I went through that until I actually did a proper test. I'm like, oh no, whoops, I fell into the marketing. And right. I mean, none of us are immune.
It's so easy. And not only that, there's ego involved in it. When you start, you're like, I heard the thing that nobody, that they said I shouldn't hear. That makes me special. And, I don't want to admit that I'm not. I'm just like, after doing it for as long as I've been doing it, and Rob as well, but I can only speak for myself, my ego's completely out of it. I no longer feel the need to impress you with my super ears. I've been tested. I do have very good ears. There's just no doubt about that. That's objectively true. But it doesn't mean that they're any better than yours. And even if they were, it doesn't mean that my experience is any different than yours. I'm not gonna hear the difference in the amplifier if the amplifiers are both linear and not clipping. Because it shouldn't exist, and it doesn't exist. We've seen this over and over.
Well, I found it interesting because even in the Audioholics articles that he was mentioning, it's like they were saying how ideally there should be no difference between amplifiers. That if they're working within their range, they should just be gain on a wire. That's what an amplifier ideally should be. There shouldn't be a difference. So I mean that was right in the articles that Ted was referencing. So the last bit I wanted to say on this, along the lines of the old guard, new guard too, was that our knowledge tends to go along in lockstep time-wise with acquiring new gear. And so it can be very difficult to separate, well, was it actually the new gear that made the difference, or is that I'm more practiced at setting this stuff up now? And that if I actually went back to my old setup and redid the setup with my now current knowledge, that I actually could have obtained these results. So the last bit I want to say on it, and this is something that I've mentioned many times when Infinite Gary asks questions, is that I do not have a problem with what I essentially call a shortcut, which is that I bought this product, I plugged it in, I didn't have to extensively mess with any settings, and it gave me a result that I found pleasing. I'm like, I am okay with that. I don't have a problem with that as long as you are okay with potentially spending money that, strictly speaking, you didn't have to spend to get that result, but you would have had to put in time and effort to get there, and maybe it's easier to just spend the money and plug it in and be happy than to spend all the time and effort, which is perhaps more valuable to you, and rightfully so. It very well could be. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm upset if someone buys a product, they plug it in, and they're happy with it, because that's great. Yeah. The whole point is the end result. But I don't want the false equivalency of saying that I bought this product and got a good result, therefore the only way to get that result is to buy this product. Those two things it's not how the logic works.
Yeah, if somebody sent me a Macintosh amp, I would hook it up. It would give me pleasure to do so, and I would be happy about it. But I don't think that would be the reason why things sounded the way they sounded in my home theater. It would be the reason why some things glowed blue, though,
But
for
I
sure.
can completely understand the people who say, "Yeah, Rob, I've heard you talk about. Here's all the settings I need to change. Here's the tedium I need to go through, particularly with the subwoofer setup." Whereas if I just buy this product and it gets me like 95% or even all the way to what I want, and I don't have to deal with any of that, can't I just do that instead? I'm like, yeah, as long as you are okay with spending the money, go for it, because you will save a lot of
Right.
time.
Yeah. Karl rescued his dad's old Sony SVHS player. S stands for Super, right? Super
I think
VHS.
that's
Is
all
that
it
the way
stood
it is?
for. I think so.
Yeah, I think I had one of these,
My
and
parents sure
they're
did, except
quite
theirs was a
nice.
JVC.
It, and a Nakamichi Dragon cassette deck from Going to Goodwill. For the SVHS player, he wants to use its best output, which of course is his S-video connection, but none of his modern components has S-video inputs anymore. Can we recommend an S-video to HDMI converter?
Nope.
It's like asking somebody, how can I convert smoke signals to, facts? Like, well, uh, I mean, you're gonna need some help. No, anyways, he'd like to use it with his Denon X8500H receiver and JVC NX7 projector. It seems like you could get component though,
That
right?
is
Out of
pretty
this,
much what you need to do. Is go S video to component, and then your X8500H has component ins, which it will digitize and output from its HDMI output.
right?
But I'm not 100% on this, and I didn't have time to research it fully. I don't think it's able to take 480i component and output that from HDMI. I think there is a restriction where it
Mm.
can't do 480i component. That just, it rang a bell somewhere in the back of my head. So because of that, to be safe, I'm going to mention two potential solutions to you. One is the less expensive $80 solution from Ambery, which is just a straight S video to component video converter. Converting S video to component video is not as easy as you might think. You actually have to do a whole color re-rendering process in there
Wow.
to get it correct. So that's why it's $80 just to do that. But that, it does no scaling. So it's going to be an interlaced, I mean, not even 480. It's actually like a 360 if you're calling it in digital terms. But
Oh my God, this is gonna look so
it's going
bad.
to be an interlaced signal coming out of that amper unit. So because of that, HDTV Supply, which is sort of like commercial conversion supplies for professional settings, they have the one that will definitely work. It is an S video to actually VGA converter, but then they include a VGA to component conversion in there. But it doesn't just do the color re-rendering, it does scaling as well, all the way up to 1080p if you wanted to. It's $150. So how bad do you want to watch those SVHS cassettes?
Now, I appreciate that you rescued it from Goodwill because Goodwill is a for-profit company, and while I, you know, don't necessarily begrudge them making a profit, I've heard some horror stories about how they treat their employees
Mm.
and some other stuff. So I try to stay away from Goodwill personally, unless it's like true junk. So try to find a better charity, but give it to them
Ah,
because this is this is this is gonna look so
I
bad.
mean,
You're gonna be
you
so
could just
disappointed.
take the composite output and plug it right into your Denon. It's not going to look as good as it potentially could, but the real solution here that I'm confident in pointing you to is $150. So it better really be worth it to you. That's all I'm saying there.
All right. He says Rob has an ATI amplifier,
I
correct?
do.
That is correct. Would that still be the amplifier brand we would recommend for a front three set of Martin Logan electrostatic speakers that dip down well below 4 ohms? ATI only seems to have their signature series and their Class D series now. Would they be worth the price?
Now,
Uh,
here's a case where I am on board with having an external amplifier to power those
yeah.
particular speakers.
Yes,
See?
yes, yes. This is not. There's no question that when you buy Martin Logans
Uh-huh.
that you are also on the market for some external
Yep.
amplification because that's sort of their signature stuff. And there's like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. Um, So you do have to really worry about whether or not the amps can handle it. So ATI, uh, they have amps that can handle it for sure,
Yes.
but don't they make the monoprice amps as
That they
well?
do. They make the monoprice monolith amps, and that is absolutely where I would be pointing anybody today. The monolith 3X, which is the 3-channel version, goes for $1250, which is 1/3 of the price of the ATI branded equivalent in the Signature series. I mean, they used to have the AT 1800 series, which is the one that I have, which is basically what got turned into the monolith series now, because the monolith series has the exact same specifications as what the 1800 series used to have, but ATI doesn't sell the 1800 series directly anymore. They just sell their Signature series now. Now, look, the Signature series are fantastic in every way that you
Right.
can possibly objectively measure them, but they are not 3 times better than the monolith. I mean, there are crazy test scenarios where there might be a way to hear it, but I just don't find it worth it. The Monolith 3X is absolutely what I would point you toward. I think all the value is there. I would not point you to a Class D with electrostatics.
No,
That would not be a
no.
good match. Now, Emotiva's XPA3 would also be an entirely decent choice here. I happen to like the monoliths better. I think a linear power supply is still the way to go versus switch mode, but that's just a personal preference thing on my part. I can't even totally justify that, objectively speaking. But given the price points, I'm going to point you to the monolith 3X all day long.
All right. Nick. I guess this is a different Nick. We have many Nicks.
We had a Nick B to
Let's play.
start. This is also Nick B, but it's not the same Nick B.
All right. What's the difference between native and auto for the color space setting on his TV? Which one should he be using? Color space setting on his TV.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I need more information than this. Like, which TV is it? And
Well,
I
yeah,
mean,
I mean that might help, but it's pretty universal. Most TVs have this under the advanced and the color space. You get to choose.
man,
Yeah, so
I would
native
probably
is
go
just
auto,
look,
but that was just me.
your television has either a backlight if it's an LCD, or if it's an OLED, it just has the organic light emitting diodes putting out the light. But the backlight, if it's red, green, blue of some sort, it's going to have color points of red, green, blue that are not necessarily exactly where they should be for Rec 709 color versus DCI-P3 color versus the old SEMP DC color that we used with standard definition. The red, green, blue points of the backlight of your television are going to be whatever they happen to be. And that is what the native color space setting gives you. It just says, we're not going to attempt to tune what the native red, green, blue points are of our backlight. You're just going to get it as it is. I don't really know why you would use that, other than potentially connecting it to a PC where you're doing all of the color calibration on the PC instead of in the
Sure.
monitor. That's about the only scenario where that might make sense to me. This would be primarily for like matching it to print work as opposed to video work, because for video work it just makes sense to calibrate the display that you're using. So if you're trying to match it up to something that you're printing, you might use that native color space. So auto is the correct setting for any of the modern day televisions, your 4K HDR TVs. You want it set to auto. They all do a good job, any of the ones that we recommend, of switching correctly between Rec 709 for high definition and DCI-P3 within a Rec 2020 container for HDR. So set it to auto.
There you go. Dennis. Dennis says that after running his room correction auto setup in his AV receiver, he typically ends up making quite a few manual changes to the settings. That being the case, is it even worth doing the auto setup? Yes.
Do you want equalization? Because
Yeah.
then yes.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, at least you start from a base of, the distance settings are correct, the trim levels are correct, you've got the right volume going everywhere. So, at the very least, you're going from that. And then if you decide to make changes from that, well, that's it's your home theater. You should be able to listen to it the way you want to, and at least you're coming from a base of trying to get to something flat
Sure.
is the way I would look at it. And a lot of honestly, a lot of receivers, if you don't run the auto setup, you can't EQ it anyways.
That's right.
So you gotta do the auto setup if you want to use the EQ. So
Yeah,
there you go.
honestly, the main thing is the equalization, because I mean, After the fact, after the auto setup, you can change the speaker sizes. You can change the crossover frequencies. You can change the distances, the levels. You can't change the configuration. You can't switch from 5 speakers to 9 speakers and have that be okay after the auto setup. It'll turn your room correction off if you change the configuration. But the equalization that the auto setup does, that doesn't exist unless you run it. So if you want to make use of any of that equalization and then change all the other things that you are able to change, that's perfectly okay, but you still need to run the auto setup.
There you go. I think I wonder if he's not actually talking about the EQ though.
Well, he said
I wonder
room
if he's
correction
talking
though.
about.
So I mean, room correction has to be
I know he
EQ.
did,
Yeah.
but I wonder if what the changes he's making are like to the volume of the subwoofers, the
Right.
volume of the individual channels and stuff, which wouldn't require you to
No.
run the stuff, but at least then your trim levels are all even before you
Before you
start
start.
messing
Yeah.
around with them. John has asked us home theater related questions in the past. To this podcast? Why?
Because we tell people to send in their questions to question at
I don't
avrant.com.
know why they believe us.
We ask them to
We're
do
clearly
that.
just doing this trying to make people save money for no reason and not have good audio experiences because we're mean. We're just big old meanies, Rob.
You've been doing this for like 12 years, and your goal the whole time was to prevent anyone from getting to maximum performance. That was your goal,
If
Tom.
they had seen my home theater and seen the stack of monoblock amplifiers that I have to get the pristine sound that I have in my room, I don't want anybody else to have this. This is mine. I'm not sharing. I'm also not Kathy. All right, John has asked us some home theater related questions in the past, but lately he's been spending more time getting into critical music listening. Naturally, that has led to reading a lot about all analog setups and vinyl and DACs, blah, blah, blah. But he doesn't really buy into that whole audiophile scene, he says, before asking us to let us get him into the audiophile scene. He's tried out Tidal, Spotify Premium, and Amazon Music Unlimited. He appreciates that high-quality music streams are so readily available and relatively affordable and provide access to a huge and diverse selection. So he plans to continue using at least one of those services. He is listening on a Denon X4400H, either through his Hi-Fi Man HE400i headphones. I'm a little envious of those. I would like to have some Hi-Fi Man headphones, or his dual HSU VTF2 subwoofers and a pair of KEF Q500 speakers powered by an Emotiva XP8 amp. He's got a Roku Ultra and NVIDIA Shield Pro, plus a lot of streaming services are available directly through the Denon itself. So John wants to know, does it make a difference which source device he uses? In his research, he's found a lot of videos and write-ups praising the $1,100 Cambridge Audio CXN network streamer as the greatest way to listen to digital audio sources. They talk about its upsampling and Wolfson DACs. Like they're the only ones that have Wolfson DACs. I think my phone has a Wolfson DAC. Let's all get excited about Wolfson DACs now. He's not opposed to spending good money, but for $1,100, it's going to have to be a significant improvement. What's our advice? My advice is whatever you have that's free on hand, use that, because I don't think that it can possibly. First of all, upsampling something doesn't make it better. It just makes it bigger. It's all it does is make it bigger. It's not better. It's bigger.
But it was 1644.1, Tom, and now it's 24.192. It's got to be better, Tom. The numbers went up.
No matter how much air you put in the balloon, it is still a balloon. No matter how much is there, you cannot make it more balloon than it already is.
No matter
It's just
how
larger.
big the bag that's holding your sandwich, the sandwich didn't change. Yeah, that's
Sandwich is the same size, Rob. There's just as many slices of salami on it. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, the sandwich might have fallen apart inside of the big bag. That could happen.
So the only thing you want to do is you want to go to whatever streaming service that you're using. Make sure that whatever device that you are is compatible with its highest quality.
Right.
That's the thing you're looking for. Okay, you don't care about anything else. You don't care that some reviewer got his. I'm trying to say this not dirty and it's not coming out. So got all excited about the fact that this audio streamer cost $1,100 and therefore gave it a good review because he was all excited about it. Because 100% guarantee you that's what happened. Okay, that is what happened. That man got excited because the thing was so expensive, and now he's gonna try to justify why you should get it. It's not. It's not any better than anything else. It just makes the front of your receiver say 24-192.
Well, it doesn't even
and
do
if
that
that's
because
all,
if they're talking about the Wolves and DACs, then they were converting it to analog inside of that
that's
network
true.
player before they even sent it out. But of
That's
course,
true.
we're probably talking to a crowd where, they only have a stereo preamplifier that's analog only, so it can't even take a digital source. So of course they're going to worry about the DACs that are built into the streaming player. So, okay, look. You want to take a digital signal from whatever device is playing it and send a digital signal to your Denon X4400H. That's what you want to do. So DACs in the source device are immaterial. You want to send the digital signal anyway. You have a device that at this moment plays all of the highest quality versions, be it from Tidal, Spotify, or Amazon right now, and that is your NVIDIA Shield Pro. It can even do Atmos from Tidal, which is a new feature that not a ton of devices support, but your NVIDIA Shield Pro does. So you are in good shape there. The only possible near future change that might occur is that we are expecting that Amazon Music will start releasing their catalog of Atmos music to a home format, because it's still the case that you have to use the Echo Studio speaker, which is a dumb way to listen to Atmos. So once they have a home version, we're not certain that the NVIDIA Shield Pro is going to be one of the first devices to support that. It might be. We just don't know for sure. We are expecting that something like the Amazon Fire TV Cube, which is another device that can play the highest version of Tidal and the highest version of Spotify, and we would expect it would play the highest level of Amazon when that changes, since it's Amazon's own device. So maybe at that point, you're like, I'll pick up an Amazon Fire TV Cube. But for right now, your Shield Pro does everything you could possibly want it to do.
Aaron, this is going to be the last one, dude. I'm fading so hard over here. Aaron has a 14 by 15 by 9 foot room. It's enclosed, and he is trying to finalize his home theater plans. He'd like a 7.2.4 configuration, but he is hung up on the idea of maybe having 4 subs. 14
by 15
by 15 by 9. Sir, are you planning on sitting on the subs? Because it seems like that's where they would have to be. His initial plan is to get dual SVS SB2000 Pro subs or maybe Rhythmic F12s and put them in the middle of his front wall, the middle of his back wall. But if he were to spend less on each individual sub, he could potentially put one in each corner and possibly even go ported instead of sealed. What we'd recommend. I would recommend sealed. This is a small room. I would recommend
1,890 cubic feet. 1,890 cubic
feet. SB2000 Pro subs and wherever the hell you want to put them, honestly, because they're going to flex the door off the freaking hinges, dude.
Technically speaking, you probably don't even need SB2000 Pros for under 1,900 cubic feet, but they have some really nice features, like the whole being able to tune them with the app and do all that kind of stuff is really nice, and they will perform very, very, very well in this room size. Okay, is there any potential benefit to going 4 subs? Well, theoretically, it could be even more uniform across an even larger seating area. It's theoretically possible. I really don't think it's worth it.
I don't either.
Yeah, you get so much from going from 1 to 2 and then from 2 to 4 does potentially get you a little. If you have a large seating area, it can definitely be worth it if you really want maximum uniformity across that whole large seating area. But in a 14 by 15 room, I don't think you have a large seating area. So I would stick with the 2, and I would stick with a pair of SB2000 Pros.
So with about $2,000 to spend on the display, does he get a 65-inch OLED or a 75-inch LCD? He'd be fine with sitting as close as 6 feet from eyes to screen. Get the OLED. Sit real close to it, I guess.
It's so. The thing is, what are you getting for a $2,000 75-inch? Now, there are some good $2,000 75 inches. There's Sony's X900H. There's Vizio's P Quantum X. Those are good LCD TVs that are 75 inches for $2,000. They are not as good as an OLED. It's just, so if you never saw an OLED though, would you have any complaints? Now, the thing about the P Quantum X, superb black levels, outstanding color, ridiculous brightness, but it blooms. Like the blooming on the P Quantum X it blooms some blooms around little bright objects on a black background. So how much that bugs you? Now the X900H from Sony, Sony does the whole thing where they care more about retaining all the shadow detail and not necessarily retaining all the highlight detail. They'll actually allow that to clip out, but they like a really nice even gamma. They don't tend to have very noticeable blooming on theirs, but it doesn't look like an OLED. It doesn't have that same just per pixel response. So, I mean, a 65-inch OLED is not tiny, and you're in a pretty small room.
And he'll sit 6 feet in front of the thing.
If you're willing to sit that close, you're going to have a 44-degree field of view at that point. Yeah, I think I'd point you to the OLED. It's so gorgeous.
All right. I guess we can do Christian and we'll be done. Christian, what is PlayStation 5's Tempest 3D? Is this going to be long? Because I don't know what
this is short.
Okay. What is PlayStation 5's Tempest 3D audio engine all about? From what he's read, it seems like it's mostly aimed at headphones and maybe TV speakers. Will it actually improve the audio experience for a full surround sound setup? How does it compare to Microsoft's announcements of full Dolby Atmos audio for games and the new option to apply DTS-X processing to any Xbox audio output? First of all, Microsoft's going to screw up the sound. Let's just put it in. Let's just put that out there.
If they did, that's for sure.
It's going to happen. I have predicted it. I have said it, and it will be so. I don't know what this is, but I'm going to guess it's just for the headphones and TV speakers because everything else is going to come out, Atmos or whatever it is. I mean, I would guess. I mean, why would they need to reinvent 3D, audio sound? I mean,
because there's Sony.
Why would they do that?
They do. I mean, they had their own movie format. Remember, SDDS audio, was that theirs? They had their own thing.
Oh, right, the Sony digital, whatever it was. Yes.
When everything was going Dolby, they had SDDS audio. So this Tempest 3D audio thing, I mean, it is object-based audio. It is their version of it. And you're absolutely right that what they've announced so far is basically 2-channel only. Now, Mark Cerny, when he was introducing all the tech specs about the PlayStation 5, said they are working on a surround sound implementation of it. But I mean, what this is akin to is Windows Sonic. Right, you've seen Windows Sonic on your Xbox. That's one of the available output options if you're using headphones. And that is Microsoft's own version of essentially upmixing any audio signal to you're supposed to be more immersive, more spatial type of sound through a 2-channel audio system. And PlayStation Tempest is the same idea, it's just from Sony. So instead of licensing Dolby Atmos or licensing DTS-X, they decided to roll their own. And so far, we don't know that it's going to do anything for surround sound setups yet. It's primarily targeted at headphones. It's why they have their own PlayStation 5 branded headset to go along with it, which of course is going to work with this thing. So yeah, think of it most like Windows Sonic. That's really what it's most similar to. Let's see, how does it compare to having actual Atmos in the games or DTS-X processing? Now, I don't know if PlayStation 5 is going to support Atmos in games. They haven't announced that it will yet. If studios are putting Atmos in their games, it seems like it would behoove them, but we don't know for certain that they will. So if they don't, then they're going to be relying on this Tempest 3D audio thing, and hopefully they find a way of applying it to full surround sound and immersive audio, home theater setups, but nothing can be guaranteed. So I prefer the idea of going with industry standards like Dolby Atmos, as long as Xbox does it correctly.
They won't. All right, who got
we
left?
have Infinite Gary, Anthony B, which is fairly long question, so I'm scrolling down to get to Mike P and Brandon N. We will answer you, gentlemen, next week.
All right. You want your question answered on this podcast? All you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week, Ian and Eric, for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 125 patrons over at patreon.com, including Enrique. So thank all of you.
Yeah, Ian and Eric, thank you very much for those PayPal donations. And thanks very much to our 125 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant Podcast. Enrique, thank you very much for being one of them.
We also want to thank Adam, Sean, Matt, Nathan, Shannon, John, Mike, and Brandon for sending us notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going during the pandemic.
Yeah, it is very nice to get those notes of encouragement. So Adam, Sean, Matt, Nathan, Shannon, John, Mike, and Brandon, thank you very much. We really do appreciate it, and we super duper appreciate everyone continuing to listen and sending in your questions. Thank you very, very much.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com.
This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.